always difficult to follow Walter's introduction. Thank you. Thank you for coming. The title of my talk is If Then Else, Procedural Rhetoric in the Obama Campaign. This is a talk, this is sort of a trial run of something I'll be doing at MLA. It's also currently under review at Rhetoric Society Quarterly. So any feedback you have, I will incorporate when they either reject it or give me a rebuttal or send it. What you see on the screen is an if-else command. Any programmers in the room? All right. Oh yes, I already know Scott's program. No one else. Okay. And the if-else statement is exactly what it sounds like, right? If this condition is true, do this, right? Well, we're going to talk a little bit about this kind of language, this kind of procedure in a couple of different realms.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Where did the else come?
Do
this.
Right. Else, do something else. Right.
Specific.
It will be specific within the context of a computer program, right? So, and we'll talk about how these play out in different contexts. So it's become fairly commonplace to argue that political campaigning has changed significantly in our sort of current technological environment. What you see here is a text message announcing that Obama has chosen Biden to be his VP nominee. We have YouTube debates. We have extensive websites run by political campaigns. Most discussions of this kind of commonplace that technology has changed the way we campaign focuses on issues of connectivity and communication between organizers and volunteers and efficiency. I'm going to take a slightly different approach, talking about how the technologies used, specifically software, express arguments. Procedures, these if-then statements within software, actually express argument. This is not about the content generated by the software. It's about the rules written to generate that content. That's the distinction. So we can locate procedures here in code, or, and we'll talk about these more later, difficult to see what that is, unfortunately. That is a script used by the Obama campaign in their phone banks, which also is a series of if-then statements. If the caller says this, you say this. So we're going to talk more about that in a minute. First, let me talk a little bit about what we mean by procedure. Procedurality, interactivity, participation, sort of define some terms. I'm drawing a little bit on the work of Janet Murray here in her book, Hamlet on the Holodeck. She says, when we talk about interactive media, what we mean is we are participating with procedures. We sit down to use a piece of software, we sit down to play a video game. We are interacting with procedures that the programmer has written, and we are sort of filling in some blanks. Now, Ian Bogost has taken this to the realm of rhetoric and has defined what he calls procedural rhetoric, the practice of persuading through processes in general and computational processes in particular. Bogost talks about video games and software, but he also sort of zooms out to talk about procedures writ large, the procedures that, say, someone uses in a call center when you call in with a problem with a product. Now, Bogost says that, unfortunately, political campaigns have not really tapped into this sort of procedural expression in any sort of meaningful way. And his example, or one of his examples, is this video game called Pork Invaders that was used by the McCain campaign during this most recent election. Of course, Space Invaders with just a different sort of set of icons. And what Bogost argues is that procedural expression can be much more than this. It can actually express meaningful arguments. It can do more than just putting a new skin on a video game. So along these lines, Bogost himself worked with the Howard Dean campaign in, would that have been 2000? Am I getting my year right? 04, thank you. And to sort of answer this, his own call that these campaigns are not making use of procedural expression, he and a colleague built the Howard Dean for America video game. Now, in this game, you would hand out flyers, you would recruit volunteers, you would sort of do all the things that we now think of as what we do in a get-out-the-vote kind of campaign. Now, Bogost's hope was that this could sort of not only get people excited about the campaign, but that it could somehow make arguments about what the Howard Dean campaign was about. This is somebody who played the game and this is their sort of critique of it. Quote, "I have to believe there's more difference between any two candidates than the image on the front of a brochure or a name on a sign. And if there isn't, or if this game leads people to believe that there isn't, won't it have the opposite of its desired effect? If handing out leaflets for Dean is the same thing as handing out leaflets for Kucinich, why should I vote for either one of them?" So what this person did was play the game, reflected on the argument that it was providing, right? And sort of had this moment where they kind of realized that if this is all that the campaign is about, I'm not sure if I'm interested. Now, Bogos argues that, he argues two things. One, that this is the hope of a procedural argument, or a procedural rhetoric, that people will not just play the video game, but somehow reflect on the argument that is presented to them. One of his examples, for instance, the game Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, which is, I think, the most recent iteration of this game, Grand Theft Auto. The character that you're controlling in that game, in the most recent iteration, has to eat to actually gain sustenance and remain a part of the game. The problem is the only most access to food that game character has is McDonald's and other fast food, right? So you can eat, but it doesn't really give you sustenance for very long because they're bad calories. Now, Bogos points this out to say that the game is arguing for sort of the complexities of an urban environment in which these are the food resources given to you. This is not just a sort of tricky little thing to enter into the game. It's actually a way to get you to reflect on the predicament of this gameplay situation. What this user of the Howard Dean game is saying is, I now am able to reflect on the argument, and I'm not sure I'm all that convinced that I should be a Howard Dean supporter. Now, Bogos argues, again, as I've said, that political rhetoric has not really made any meaningful use of procedural rhetoric. But what I'm going to sort of take us through is how the Obama campaign did deploy certain procedural arguments, whether they meant to or not. This is a quote from Gene Koo, a game designer, who's responding to Bogos and is saying, Bogos says that Pork Invaders is an example that procedural rhetoric is not really has not been used by political campaigns. And he's saying all we have to do is look at MyBarackObama.com to see what he's calling sort of the best augmented reality game available, right? Or the best political augmented reality game. An augmented reality video game is a game that sort of blurs the boundaries between what's happening in the game and what's happening in real life. So we'll talk a little bit about MyBarackObama.com as a procedural argument, and almost as a video game. Unfortunately, MyBarackObama.com, the shorthand became MyBo. This is how people refer to it now. And here it's even worse because it's like saying MyBO. We'll just call it MyBo for short. Okay, so let's talk about what happened with the MyBarackObama.com. MyBarackObama.com, as some of you may have seen, was essentially a Facebook-type website. What you could do is sign in, organize with other volunteers. You could set up various meetings. You could host events. Not surprisingly, Chris Hughes, who helped set this website up, was one of the founders of Facebook, left his gig at Facebook to work for the Obama campaign. What you see here is a quote from Hughes in August of 2007, rolling out their new system. Today we're unrolling a new way to measure your impact on the campaign, points in the My Barack Obama network. Just about every action you can take on the website now will give you points to make it easier to see all the hard work you're putting into them to make the campaign succeed. If you host an event, that'll show up on your profile and you'll get 20 points. Write a blog post and you'll get 15. At the end of the day, earning points isn't what this campaign is about. You've made this campaign into a grassroots movement, which is clearly hungry for change and ready to get involved in the political process on behalf of Barack Obama. Adding points to the website is just a simple way to measure the impact you're having day in and day out on the campaign. You deserve credit and recognition for your involvement. Okay, so they designed this as a way to sort of motivate people. But what it also did was show us the kinds of activities that the campaign valued. 20 points for this, 15 points for that, 50 points for this tells us, okay, this isn't just a sort of fun game. This is an argument about the kinds of things we should be doing and should be focusing on. Okay, so this system gets rolled out. They put a leaderboard on the front page of the website. People are racking up thousands of points.